welcome to our channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. Captured in 1944, in Normandy, France, this photo shows a peculiar structure unearthed by Allied soldiers shortly after the D-Day invasion. Hidden beneath an abandoned farmhouse was a Nazi radio room, complete with encrypted code books and a self-destruct device wired to detonate if triggered remotely. The device was inactive, but its presence puzzled intelligence officers. It hinted at a deeper layer of covert operations in occupied France. Seen in 1942, deep in the Libyan desert, British patrols found a German soldier perfectly mummified by the desert heat. Still clutching a rifle, his uniform remarkably intact, the soldier had apparently died alone, abandoned during Rommel's retreat. The haunting discovery was photographed as a grim reminder of the war's isolation. Captured in 1945, in Taiba, discovered beneath a bombed-out church. Inside were medieval manuscripts, gold chalices and Nazi documents linking the horde to the Ahnenerbe, Hitler's occult research division. Many believed the church was used as a ritual site, blending ancient mysticism with modern warfare. Seen in 1944, in the Pacific Theater on the island of Peleliu, US Marines unearthed a Japanese field hospital carved into the rock. Among the eerie contents were surgical tools, dozens of unopened morphine vials, and crude anatomical drawings. But what stood out most was a wall covered in hand-painted cherry blossoms, oddly serene in such a grim place. Captured in 1945, in Bavaria, Germany, this photo shows a hidden cellar discovered beneath a villa once occupied by SS officers. The space contained hundreds of children's shoes. Historians still debate whether it was a hiding place, a storage facility, or something far more sinister. Taken in 1943, in Krakow, Poland, an abandoned Gestapo safe house revealed a wall painted in invisible ink, only visible under ultraviolet light. When exposed, it displayed maps, escape routes, and what appeared to be a coded message. The technique baffled even the most seasoned code breakers of the time. Found in 1945, in Manila, Philippines, a collapsed tunnel system beneath the city revealed a Japanese war room frozen in time. Communication equipment, teacups, and even fresh documents were scattered across the floor, suggesting a rapid evacuation. Oddly, one wall was adorned with a large silk tapestry of Mount Fuji, untouched by mold or flame. Seen in 1941, in the Norwegian wilderness, this image shows a strange wreck pulled from a frozen lake. It was initially believed to be a downed Luftwaffe plane, but the fuselage had Cyrillic markings. Soviet defectors later confirmed it was part of a secret reconnaissance mission into Nazi territory months before Operation Barbarossa. Captured in 1945, near Linz, Austria, American troops stumbled upon an underground art depot filled with priceless sculptures and paintings. One piece, a large marble statue, was marked with a swastika and an unknown glyph. Some scholars believed it referenced ancient Germanic pagan symbols appropriated by the SS. Taken in 1944, in Normandy, France, this haunting photo shows an abandoned German weather station. Inside, soldiers found not only meteorological equipment, but dozens of hand-drawn astrological charts. Historians speculate that the data may have been used for timing military operations based on lunar phases. Seen in 1943, in Rome, Italy, a bunker discovered beneath the Vatican during an air raid inspection revealed a stash of WWII intelligence files labeled propaganda operations, Axis only. Their existence raised eyebrows about possible backdoor diplomacy or hidden Vatican knowledge of Axis plans. Found in 1942, off the coast of Egypt, a mysterious crate surfaced in a sunken German U-boat near Alexandria. Inside were scrolls wrapped in waxed cloth, later identified as Coptic religious texts. No one knows why they were there or how they came into Nazi hands, but the U-boat's mission remains classified to this day. Captured in 1945 in Nuremberg, Germany, a mural was photographed during the Allies' sweep of Nazi high command facilities. It depicted an enormous phoenix rising from a city in flames and bore the word Wiedergeburt, German for rebirth. Some believe it symbolized Hitler's vision of a post-war empire, even in defeat. Seen in 1944, in Burma, now Myanmar, this photo shows a Japanese officer standing beside a massive, partially unearthed stone idol. The local villagers warned of a curse attached to the statue, and weeks later, the entire regiment vanished in the jungle. Their disappearance was never officially explained. Captured in 1945, in Munich, Germany, inside a bombed villa, American soldiers found a grand piano with a hidden compartment. Inside were blueprints for WWII rockets and a single note reading, "For Wagner." It's believed the owner was both a composer and a covert weapons engineer. Captured in 1945, in Paris, France, this rooftop photo shows Nazi soldiers relaxing near a strange array of antennas, but the device wasn't standard communication gear, it was a modified Tesla coil. French resistance fighters claimed the Nazis were experimenting with localized EMP effects, but the full details were lost when the building was bombed. Discovered in 1945, high in the Alps, Allied forces uncovered a snow-covered cave containing Nazi research journals labeled Project Morgenrot or Project Red Dawn. The contents referenced weather manipulation, cloud seeding, and controlling battlefield fog. No other documents from this program were ever found. Captured in 1944, in Ukraine. This disturbing image shows a field of scorched earth with hundreds of wooden stakes driven into the soil. Soviet soldiers believed it was a psychological warfare installation intended to terrify locals. Each stake was capped with a metal plate, inscribed with numbers that have yet to be decoded. Seen in 1943, in Iceland. While building an Allied base, engineers uncovered a cavern containing Viking runes next to WWII-era Nazi crates. It's unclear how the Nazis accessed the location. Some believe they were searching for ancient Norse artifacts linked to Aryan mythology, taken in 1944. In the Balkans, a strange series of symbols carved into trees along a mountain pass revealed what appeared to be an occult trail. Allied intelligence followed it and uncovered a hidden camp with SS markings and ritual objects. The purpose of the camp has never been verified. Unearthed in 1945 near Salzburg, Austria, a network of hidden tunnels stretched beneath a Nazi officer training academy. Within the passageways were maps marked with red zones labeled relocation sites. To this day, the meaning of those zones remains unknown, and no official records ever explain their purpose. Discovered in 1944, deep in the Ardennes forest, Allied scouts found a small chapel completely untouched by war. Inside, the altar was covered in moss, but on the walls were pinned photographs of Nazi officers and candles burned down to the wick. No units claimed responsibility for the site, which appeared to have been used for private ceremonies. Photographed in 1945, just outside Prague, Czechoslovakia, this barn was found sealed with chains from the inside. Once opened, it revealed rows of mannequins dressed in Nazi uniforms, positioned as if at attention. Some believed it was a psychological training site. Others suspected it was part of an abandoned deception campaign. Seen in 1943 in the Carpathian Mountains, a mountaintop bunker was found with snow-covered steps leading to a stone door carved with runes. German Alpine troops had occupied the area briefly, but locals said the site predated the war. The carvings matched ancient Dacian symbols, and no one has ever fully translated their meaning. Captured in 1944 in Warsaw, Poland, this image shows an underground classroom discovered beneath the ruins of a university. Desks were lined up neatly, and textbooks written in German and Polish lay untouched. A chalkboard still bore arithmetic problems from the last lesson. It was as if time had simply stopped. In 1945, inside a wrecked Luftwaffe base in Denmark, a locked room was discovered containing dozens of gas masks, modified with tinted lenses, and strange inscriptions scratched along the filters. The masks were never documented in military issue records. Some believe they were part of experimental night operations. Unearthed in 1942 in North Africa, British engineers found a well-preserved Roman mosaic beneath a German encampment. Though thousands of years old, it had survived untouched. What shocked the soldiers was that a few stones in the mosaic appeared to be freshly restored, indicating the Nazis had not only found it, but attempted to repair it. Found in 1945 in a villa near Innsbruck, Austria, Allied troops discovered a child's bedroom left intact. On the walls were painted swastikas, but in the center hung a hand-drawn image of Mickey Mouse holding a Nazi flag. Researchers believed the room belonged to the child of a high-ranking officer, surrounded by propaganda and fantasy alike. Seen in 1943 in a Berlin laboratory, this photograph shows a glass chamber labeled Still Rome, German for silent room. The chamber was soundproof, padded, and equipped with a single chair bolted to the floor. Its use was never documented, but later reports suggested it may have been part of sensory deprivation experiments. Discovered in 1945 in northern France, this train car had been sealed and buried beneath debris in a bombed-out rail yard. When opened, soldiers found it filled wall-to-wall with dolls, hundreds of them, all handmade, dressed in civilian clothes. Some speculated they had been intended for use in espionage training or psychological operations. Captured in 1944 in the Netherlands, this photo reveals a Nazi command outpost that had been camouflaged as a bakery. Inside, beyond sacks of flour and empty ovens, were encrypted radio equipment and maps of Allied air routes. It had operated for nearly a year before being exposed by resistance fighters. Unearthed in 1945 in the outskirts of Dresden, Germany, a deep pit lined with iron bars was found beneath a mansion. The area was empty, but scorch marks and metal restraints suggested it had been used to contain something or someone. No official record ever explained its design. Seen in 1944, in northern Italy, an ancient wine cellar repurposed by Nazi officers was discovered. Within it, crates of wine from the 1700s sat alongside modern munitions and portraits of Mussolini painted onto wine barrels. The strange mix of luxury and war left investigators puzzled. Found in 1943 in Belarus, Soviet troops discovered a lake with a strange green glow. Beneath the surface, the wreckage of a German scientific boat was located, carrying canisters of glowing material, believed to be a type of early radioactive compound. The crew was never recovered. Captured in 1945 in Stuttgart, Germany, a hidden room beneath a synagogue was found filled with Nazi documents. Many were written in Hebrew. Historians theorized that they had been stolen to be used for propaganda or manipulation, though the full intent remains uncertain. Taken in 1942 in the forests of eastern Poland, this photo shows a life-sized wooden replica of a town square, complete with fake buildings and mannequins. It was believed to be a mock-up used for bombing practice. Strangely, the mannequins were all dressed as clergymen. Unearthed in 1945 in Budapest, Hungary, a locked trunk was found inside a synagogue that had been converted to a Nazi command center. Inside the trunk were dozens of preserved passports, some real and some forged. Many had photos scratched out, and none of the names appeared in any known records. Seen in 1944 in Norway, deep inside a mountain base, Allied troops discovered a sealed vault with racks of white cylinders marked with black triangles. The contents were later found to be canisters of experimental nerve agents, prototypes for what would later be called chemical warfare. Most were neutralized and destroyed. Found in 1943 in a bombed crypt beneath a German cathedral, a single coffin stood intact while all others had been crushed. Inside was a body dressed in 17th century noble clothing, but curiously, a modern Nazi armband had been placed on its arm. No explanation was ever given for the bizarre burial. Captured in 1945 in Strasbourg, France, this photo reveals a steel cabinet buried behind the walls of a Nazi headquarters. Inside were photographs from private Nazi rituals, showing masked participants, pagan symbols and banners unlike any official party emblems. The cabinet had been welded shut. Discovered in 1945 near Frankfurt, Germany, a group of Allied engineers found an underground greenhouse lit by gas lamps. Inside were rows of tropical plants, bananas, cocoa and tea, growing in soil not native to the region. The facility had been heated and maintained even as the surrounding area was reduced to rubble. No one could determine who kept it running. Seen in 1943, in the mountains of Slovakia, partisans uncovered a German supply truck, abandoned in a ravine. Instead of weapons or rations, they found thousands of tiny porcelain figurines, each wrapped in silk and marked with military insignia. The shipment's purpose was never explained. Captured in 1944 in Belgium, a destroyed bunker revealed a wall covered in poems, handwritten by German soldiers. Most were in German, but a few were written in French and Russian, with references to dreams, nightmares, and a gate beneath the soil. The writings were signed only with initials. Found in 1942 in Algeria, a British patrol encountered a wrecked aircraft, partially buried in the sand. The strange part, it carried insignia from both the Luftwaffe and the Royal Air Force. Investigation suggested it had been used in a false flag operation, but no conclusive proof ever surfaced. Unearthed in 1945 near Leipzig, Germany, a spiral staircase led deep underground to a small circular room. In the center was a single iron chair surrounded by mirrors on every wall and ceiling. The room had no wiring, no tools, and no explanation, just silence and reflection. Seen in 1944, in Crete, Greece, this photo shows a stone doorway carved into a cliff face with Nazi eagles engraved at the top. Inside, British forces found ancient scrolls catalogued in German, some dating back over 1,000 years. The cave had been sealed, as if prepared for long-term preservation. Captured in 1943, in Lviv, Ukraine, Soviet troops found a Nazi archive labeled "Incompatible Music." Inside were confiscated records, banned instruments, and lists of outlawed songs. Some vinyl records had been smashed intentionally, while others were still neatly filed, as if waiting to be played again. Found in 1945, in the woods outside Hanover, Germany, a hunting lodge was repurposed as a Nazi command center. Beneath the wooden floors, soldiers discovered boxes of animal bones, each tagged, labeled, and stored like museum specimens. Some of the tags listed species that no longer existed in the region. Seen in 1942 in Sicily, Italy, Allied troops stumbled upon a collection of sculptures hidden in a wine cellar. Most were religious icons, but one was different. A smooth, faceless statue wrapped in barbed wire and standing alone in the center of the room. Its origin remains a mystery. Discovered in 1945, inside an abandoned factory near Dresden, was a sealed metal door, marked only with a lightning bolt. Inside, American troops found dozens of half-finished electronic panels and a blueprint labeled Himmel Project, Heaven Project. The documents were removed, and the rest of the facility was destroyed shortly afterward. Captured in 1944, in northern France, a farmhouse attic was found stacked with paintings, nearly all depicting distorted human figures with exaggerated, anguished expressions. None were signed. Locals said a German officer had commissioned them, but his identity was never confirmed. Found in 1943 in the Ural Mountains, a Soviet recon team entered a collapsed mine thought to be abandoned since the 1800s. Deep within, they found crates stamped with Nazi insignias and strange, jagged mining tools. No records explain how or why the Nazis had returned to the site. Seen in 1945, in Vienna, Austria, a ballroom beneath a bombed hotel was discovered perfectly intact. The chandeliers still sparkled, the dance floor still polished. On every chair was a single rose, preserved in wax. No one ever claimed responsibility for the underground hall. Discovered in 1944 in a forest near Smolensk, Russia, soldiers found a circle of stone pillars resembling Stonehenge. In the center stood a metal podium with a swastika engraved on the front. Scorch marks suggested that fire rituals or ceremonies had taken place there, but no witnesses ever came forward. Captured in 1942, in a villa outside Paris, American spies discovered a cabinet of classified documents hidden behind a mirror. The files referenced failed espionage attempts, celebrity names, and blackmail operations targeting diplomats. Many of the names were redacted, and the originals disappeared shortly after being sent to London. Seen in 1945 in Cologne, Germany, an old cathedral crypt was opened and revealed murals depicting futuristic machines, airships, and explosions painted years before the war began. Historians believe a local artist had prophetic visions, or perhaps was exposed to early scientific designs never shared with the public. Found in 1943 in a Belgian monastery, this image captures a library sealed behind a false wall. The books inside had covers made of metal and leather, each containing war poems written in code. Scholars still debate whether the writings were meant for inspiration or for encrypted messaging. Unearthed in 1945, near the Black Forest in Germany, a bunker was discovered containing shelves of human skulls. Each skull had been carefully etched with numbers and symbols. Some believed it was a failed attempt at eugenics research. Others suspected occult ritual use. Seen in 1944 in eastern Hungary, a crashed Nazi aircraft was found carrying dozens of typewritten pages, none in German. The language was unrecognizable, and linguists brought in after the war couldn't identify it. Some suspected it was a cipher too advanced to decode. Captured in 1945, in the outskirts of Munich, this farmhouse was discovered with every window bricked shut from the inside. On the walls were hundreds of photographs, faces of men, women, and children, none of whom were ever identified. In the center of the room was a camera on a tripod, its film undeveloped. Found in 1944 in a warehouse outside Rotterdam, a crate labeled "Do Not Open Until Victory" was discovered under a pile of broken furniture. Inside were Nazi propaganda posters featuring futuristic cities, flying machines, and slogans in multiple languages predicting a global Reich. The surreal images blended utopia with dystopia, hinting at a post-war world that never came to be. Discovered in 1945 in the hills of northern Albania, Allied scouts came across a mountain cave sealed with thick wooden beams. Once opened, they found walls painted with glowing mineral paste, depicting serpents, stars, and mechanical chariots. Locals claimed it had been used for ancient rituals long before the Nazis arrived. Seen in 1943, in a rural Polish village, a Nazi outpost was built directly above a 13th century plague pit. Soldiers stationed there reported hallucinations, strange sounds, and mass desertions. After the war, the outpost was razed and never rebuilt. Captured in 1945, near Bergen, Norway, a small naval base revealed a sunken submarine tethered by thick chains. Inside, it was completely stripped of equipment, except for a single chair bolted to the center of the control room, and a wall mirror facing it. No crew was ever identified. Found in 1942 in Tunisia, Allied troops uncovered a field of mechanical debris scattered across the sand. The parts didn't match any known military vehicles. Some pieces appeared to be melted and fused, with German markings etched beside strange mathematical equations. Unearthed in 1945 in Prague, a Nazi safe house had been turned into a makeshift gallery. Paintings covered the walls, portraits of the same man in different historical periods. Medieval knight, Roman soldier, 19th century aristocrat. All signed with the initials A. The implications disturbed the troops who found them. Seen in 1944 in Finland, a burned-out cabin revealed journals written by a German sniper stationed alone for months. The entries began as reports, but slowly shifted into erratic symbols and cryptic poems. The final page was a drawing of an eye staring from a tree. Discovered in 1945 in northern Italy, a village church was found desecrated, crosses inverted, altar dismantled, and black flags draped over pews. In the choir loft, Allied soldiers found film reels showing Nazi soldiers performing mock religious ceremonies. Most reels were destroyed, only fragments remain today. Captured in 1943, in rural Austria, a train station under Nazi control was found with a secret track that led into a mountain. The tunnel was collapsed, but aerial scans later revealed a vast empty space beneath. never excavated. Locals refused to speak about it, even after the war. Found in 1944 in central France, this farmhouse had a room hidden behind a false wall, filled with dozens of old dolls sitting upright in chairs. Each one wore a name tag and had burn marks on its face. No record showed who lived there, and the house had been long abandoned. Seen in 1945 in Poland, a German officer's briefcase was found buried near the ruins of a village. Inside were photographs of smiling families, all with their faces scratched out. The briefcase also contained a hand-drawn map marked with X's, none corresponding to known locations. Discovered in 1943 in Greece, Allied intelligence uncovered a Nazi warehouse filled with ancient coins, statues, and scrolls looted from museums. One scroll described rituals of resurrection and eternal knowledge. Unlike the others, it was written in Latin and stored separately in a black box. Captured in 1944 in Denmark, a shipwreck was discovered offshore with all crew missing. In the captain's log, the last entry read simply, "The sea whispers now, we cannot sleep." No lifeboats were missing, and food supplies remained untouched. Found in 1945 in Hungary, an abandoned barracks contained a mural of a massive, winged creature looming over a ruined city. Beneath it, in red paint, were the words, "He waits below." No artist was credited, and the building was demolished shortly after. Seen in 1944, in Berlin, a hidden library beneath a government building was discovered filled with books bound in human skin. Each book had no title on the spine, only a number. Scientists refused to disclose what the contents were, citing ethical concerns. Unearthed in 1943, in the Black Sea, divers recovered a Nazi capsule designed to function underwater for weeks. Inside was a single bed, ration tins, and a Bible with pages removed. Replaced with blueprints, the capsule's purpose remains speculative, though it may have been a spy pod. Discovered in 1945, near Cologne, a former boarding school was found abandoned mid-lesson. Chalk still marked the blackboard, papers scattered across desks. In the basement, investigators found a locked metal trunk containing hundreds of teeth, arranged by size and shape. Seen in 1942 in Belgium, Allied forces entered a collapsed radio tower and found a sealed room underneath. Inside was a golden gramophone playing static, even though it was unplugged. Soldiers reported migraines and nausea until it was removed. Captured in 1944 in the Carpathians, Soviet soldiers found a stone labyrinth hidden beneath an old monastery. The maze's walls were engraved with runes and arrows. At the center, a pedestal held a single Nazi officer's cap, untouched by time, dust, or decay. Found in 1945, in a cave near Berchtesgaden, Germany, a wooden box was discovered, buried under rocks. Inside was a reel of undeveloped film and a note that read, "Do not show the world what we've become." The film has never been publicly released. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, like and subscribe. Your contribution helps us bring you amazing historical content. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.